Well, good evening once again, day 133 of the Biden administration, and it comes as many across our country, from the president on down, are sounding the alarm about the future of our democracy, nothing less. This is happening just as we mark 100 years since the darkest moment in the history of an entire region that was covered up successfully for decades. A massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that decimated a thriving black community. Today, Biden became the first president to speak at the site of that attack. In his address, he linked it to what he says is a frontal assault on our right to vote.
This sacred right is under assault with incredible intensity like I've never seen, with an intensity and aggressiveness that we've not seen in a long, long time. It's simply un-American. I urge voting rights groups in this country to begin to redouble their efforts now. Earlier this year, the House of Representatives passed For the People Act to protect our democracy. The Senate will take it up later this month, and I'm going to fight like heck with every tool at my disposal for its passage. The House is also working on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is critical to providing new legal tools to combat the new assault on the right to vote. To signify the importance of our efforts, today I'm asking Vice President Harris to help these efforts and lead them among her many other responsibilities. With her leadership and your support, we're going to overcome again.
President's remarks come amid a wave of new voting restrictions in Republican-controlled states, as you know, and they come 2 days after Texas Democrats' dramatic walkout intended to derail a Republican-sponsored bill that would impose some of the toughest limits in our country on voting access. Think Jim Crow-era America. Republicans who control the Texas legislature plan to revive a bill in a special session, a move backed by the Republican governor. Democratic lawmakers say there may not be much more they can do here to resist.
We can only delay the bill for so long. We don't have the luxury of being in the majority in either chamber. And so, Democrats have done all that we can do.
Even as the president vows to fight to protect voting rights, he's also trying to get a bipartisan deal to fund that infrastructure and jobs plan. Tomorrow, he'll resume talks with Senate Republicans. Right now, they're only about $1 trillion apart. And there are new developments into the Justice Department investigation into the attack at our Capitol. This morning, federal prosecutors announced in court they're going to start to make plea offers to some members of the Oath Keepers, the right-wing extremist militia that was among the biggest groups to storm the Capitol on that day. This comes just days after 4 more members of the Oath Keepers were indicted for their roles in that day. Amid all that, President Trump, who urged his supporters to deny Joe Biden the presidency, is apparently focused once again on spreading falsehoods about the election outcome. New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman today posted this, and we quote, "Trump has been telling a number of people he's in contact with what he expects he will get reinstated by August. It isn't happening in a vacuum. It is happening as he faced the possibility of an indictment from the Manhattan DA." As you consider that, you may recall it was exactly 1 year ago today that we had this Trump photo op when he marched across Lafayette Square to St. John's Church in full authoritarian mode, flanked by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs in camo. Trump held up that Bible after police aggressively cleared away people that were protesting the murder of George Floyd. Well, we've learned now, 1 year later, that police, through an attorney in a court filing, said for the first time that tear gas was indeed used on the demonstrators that day, as they insisted it was. Senator, I'd like to start with you. I'm curious about the urgency you must feel right now, and I'm curious if you think Joe Biden can ramp up the urgency in his statements and comments.
Well, I think that what is going on at the state level, I mean, one of the dirty little secrets about our democracy is that so many of us don't pay enough attention to what goes on in state legislative races. There's a tendency, I think, of many voters in this country to focus on maybe the governor, the U.S. senator, certainly the presidential. But what is happening right now is a petri dish of awful, of awful laws that are being designed to keep people from voting, that are stripping away the power of duly elected officials that are supposed to be running our elections without fear or favor. So it is time, I think, for the president to ring the bell and say, listen, folks, this is now way more serious than whether or not we can get our bridges built. This is about our elections and making sure they still work for everybody in America. And I think what happened in Texas, what's happening in Georgia, is the beginning of a trend of these Republican-held legislatures that see this as their way forward. They don't think they can win on the merits. They've got to figure out a way to keep other people from voting that know they don't have any merit.
Yamiche, to your beat, the president went there today, not just to Tulsa physically, but to Tulsa, the story from our history, the event in our history. Talk about the deeper meaning of the visit and the spotlight it put on that city and that massacre.
Well, President Biden was the first president in history, in U.S. history, to go to Tulsa to mark the anniversary of this Tulsa race massacre. Estimates say that 300 Black people were murdered, that so many other families were left homeless. He also made sure to point out that this was the first case where we saw planes used to bomb people in the United States, a domestic aerial attack on the United States. I think that that's really important history that we should all be thinking about. And it's important to also say that this wasn't just a race massacre in Tulsa. This happened in Florida. It happened in East St. Louis. It happened in Washington, D.C., where I am right now. And there's real power in looking at the history of the way that Black people in this country were not just terrorized, but also forcibly moved out of their neighborhoods and generational wealth taken out of Black Wall Street and other places. I also think it's important that the president decided to also talk about voting rights while he was doing this sacred duty of marking this centennial. He said that he was going to put Vice President Harris in charge of pushing back on these voter restriction laws. And I think there has to be a connection really made between what we saw and the sort of historical violence that Black people have faced. And then you move forward with the death of George Floyd, and then you go through to these voting laws. Now, of course, Republicans tell me, including some that I've interviewed, say, of course, this is about voter integrity. But so many others, including the NAACP and civil rights activists, they say that these laws are really about targeting Black people and their political power, much like Tulsa was targeting Black people and their economic power. So this was a powerful moment today. There are still big questions that the Biden administration is not answering, including should there be reparations today, immediately, for the people who survived the massacre. We have at least 3 survivors, from my understanding. Some of them are 107 years old, whose wealth was taken away from them, whose homes were taken away from them. Viola Fletcher, who's 107, says that she couldn't go to grade school, that she's struggling financially right now. So there's a big question about whether or not the president will back that. So far, the White House says he backs the study of reparations, but the White House is not being clear about what could happen right now for the people that are suffering.
And indeed, to our audience, to underscore 2 things Yamiche just mentioned, turpentine bombs, homemade explosives, were dropped from biplanes on American citizens, on Black American citizens. Secondly, kudos to the Washington Post, among others, for a piece they've written reminding people other acts in our history that have been glossed over or sanded down, other massacres of Black Americans through the years that everyone needs to know about. Sam Stein, this White House came into power. Job one, if you'd asked them then, and many of us did, was to slay a pandemic. As we've just seen from this holiday weekend, it appears the worst of it is behind us. What about communication, messaging now for them going forward? Here we are talking about this urgent period in our American history. For the first time at a Memorial Day event, the President of the United States has declared that our very democracy is in peril.
Yeah, well, today was a very striking speech. I don't recall, and I don't think there has been a case in history where a president has been so blunt in a speech like that about our country's racial warts. I could be wrong. I don't think a president has ever leaned in that aggressively about the issue of racial equity. in a speech like that before. So it was a remarkable speech, and I just think that's worth underscoring. To your point, with COVID, knock on wood, on the downslope, Biden does face a real choice here. I mean, obviously, his legislative focus right now is on getting an infrastructure bill, but in terms of prioritization, he's facing a lot of pressures from different constituencies about what he should be leaning into. Of course, there's the whole issue of the January 6th Commission, voting rights legislation that's happening across the country in response to these restrictive laws in different states, the notion that democracy itself may be teetering, that we may be teetering towards autocracy, and how he handles that, what he juggles, really may determine not just this year of his presidency, but the legacy he leaves behind. There's a few pressure points that he's juggling specifically right now. One is, do you revisit the issue of the filibuster to get these things passed? It doesn't matter if you put Kamala Harris, vice president, in charge of voting legislation. So long as there's a 50 vote threshold, there's not going to be legislation that moves through the Senate. So that's one. And then two is, do you look backwards or do you look forwards? This was a question that Barack Obama confronted continuously through his presidency. He often chose to say, I'm going to look forwards. I'm not going to look retrospectively at what happened during the Bush years. Biden has been different. Today's speech was an indication that he's fine and comfortable saying, look, we need to examine our history and all the baggage that comes with it. Will he do the same with things like the January 6th Commission? Will he make another aggressive emphasis to do that and to tie it into a narrative that this is all about preserving democracy? If that's his main focus, he might not get much legislative action, but he will please a huge swath of his party, and I think historians too.